Welcome, everyone. We're so excited you've joined for today's session. My name is Ruslan. I do product marketing here at Monte Carlo, and I'll be your host today. So this is the first session in our new Agent Trust in Action series we're running. And the whole idea behind the series is you get to the live product rather than talking about the concept of Agent Trust and abstract. So we're going to get you into the product as soon as possible. There's a demo in the heart of today's session. And yeah, my job is basically to get you there as soon as possible. Before that, just quick housekeeping. We're recording this session, and the recording plus a few resources will land in your inbox afterwards, so there's no need for you to take notes today. The Q&A panel is going to be open for the entire time, so please use it as we go rather than waiting till the end. We love to hear from you, and the questions that come in mid-demo usually tend to be the sharpest one anyway, so it'd be good to hear from you. And lastly, we're going to be running a few polls today, and each will take about a few minutes at the end, and we're going to come to the end to see all the answers to your polls. Here's who is going to be joining us for this session today. Jennifer El-Khoury is a senior sales engineer here, and she's made this session possible since Jennifer will be running today's demo. So thank you, Jennifer. Tanner Brockbank leads our field engineering team. He's going to join for all your questions in the end. So if you want to know what would this take to run in my environment with my stack, this is a perfect question for Tanner. So thanks, Tanner, for joining. And I'm here to set the stage, run the polls, and moderate the Q&A at the end. So let me first start with who we are and why we're the ones running this session. Monte Carlo's mission is to enable the world's enterprises to adopt trusted AI. More than 400 enterprises work with us already today. And the word that matters in that sentence the most is the trust. The trust is the business that we are in. Every organization on this call, but also every individual, regardless of their role today, is under immense pressure to deliver something with AI attached to it. And the question that follows every single time is the same one. Can we trust it? And that is the problem that we solve. One thing I'll add too, because it just will shape everything you're about to see today, our platform is built for production. There's a lot of tooling out there that works well with one agent or in a development environment. But that part's already covered, and where teams get stuck today is bringing it up to scale. When you run many agents, real users, real money with nobody watching, and that's the gap that we're looking to close. And before I go any further, I just kind of want to know where this room sits. So we're going to run the first poll now. I want to know, where do you have AI agents running? Do you have AI agents running in production today? And is it several agents? Is it one agent? Are you still piloting or evaluating? Also, if you're watching us on LinkedIn Live, you can just type A, B, C, and D. And there's no wrong answer here. There's no judgment that we're going to cast in any direction. Everyone's somewhere on this path, us included. So it would just be good context for us to know for the rest of this session. And for all the polls we run, we'll compile and share the results we got during the Q&A. So bear with us there. But wherever you are now, this should definitely resonate. So on the left, you see what teams are building right now. You're probably working on building chatbots. You're probably working on building various agentic experiences. You're working really hard and putting lots of effort into the AI project that you see here on the left side. And so is nearly every one of your competitors. You're also most likely under a lot of pressure to deliver what's on the right side. You're probably getting questions about ROI. You're probably getting questions about development velocity. And the truth is, what's stopping you today is the trust in the results your AI will deliver. The number one barrier to moving from the left to the right is trust. And so most folks like yourself are asking themselves, how can I move faster? How can I ship the agents I can trust? And well, that's really the reason why we're here today, what Monte Carlo is all about. So here's how we do it. And this is what today's demo is centered around. We're the only vendor that takes a systems first approach to filling this gap. And we do that by looking at 4 separate layers. We believe that focusing on just one of the layers is not sufficient. For instance, if you're looking on the output layer and evals, that may work in the development stages, but then the coverage across all 4 is what gives you the confidence to put AI in production. So just briefly, bottom to top, your agents run on data, and the data can be wrong, stale, or late. You want to know that your agents are working from the right data. And if that's not the case, someone should get an alert about it as soon as possible. And that's still not the whole story. Performance problems usually show up as bad user experience. If an agent takes 4 minutes to respond, that user is already gone, right? And if a single run or one tool call costs you $60,000 at a time, your team will want to learn about it as soon as possible, not at the end of the month. And agents, once they run in production, they make lots of decisions, and that's the behavior layer. They will reason, they'll call tools, they'll pull data, they take steps in a sequence, and we track those decisions in that sequence so you can tell whether an agent is making good choices or arriving somewhere reasonable by sheer luck. And then even where the first three layers are perfect, while the answer still cannot, and just still, and you get the answer, it may still not be useful. Users often end up with responses that are technically fine, but still mostly unhelpful. And there's a lot you can measure, and we can help you a lot with measuring and knowing whether your agents are saying the outputs you're getting are any good. So these are the four layers, and we believe you need all four of them. Now, the bottom layer context, I'm very curious about. I want to ask our audience and attendees, how much does the data feeding your agents factor in your deployment plans today? Is it the first thing that you're looking at, or are you focusing on the agent layer first? And I would assume most of you are focused on the agent layer because that's like the conversation we're having day to day, and that's the trend that we're seeing, but it would be good to know one before we jump demo. That's kind of where the beauty of our agent trust platform lies. Your agent stack is heterogeneous, and we do not want you to choose. You're likely looking at several logos on this slide, and you already run more of these solutions, and you'll add more over the next year. Monte Carlo is the only vendor that integrates across models, agent frameworks, telemetry, and context sources, providing you that trust and confidence in every single point across your growing agent stack. That means the warehouses and lakes where your data lives, the BI tools where it's consumed, the ETL and the orchestration tools that move the data, the models, agentic frameworks, and the telemetry data that fuels your agents. We have more than 50 integrations and support deployments across cloud and on-prem environments to bridge that agent trust gap so that you can finally trust your agents in production. Now, that's the overview and the context for the demo. Now let's see you live in the product. And here I'm going to pass it over to Jen.
Would help if I can find my mute button. Just a quick tech check, Ruslan. Thank you for passing it over to me. Are you able to see my screen okay? Perfect. I'm seeing thumbs up from Tanner. Awesome. Hi, everybody. Jennifer Elcoria, Solutions Engineer here at Monte Carlo. I'm very excited today to show you our agent trust platform at Monte Carlo. And we're going to be talking through the four layers, as Ruslan mentioned, the context, the behavior, the performance, and the output, and how Monte Carlo helps with agent observability and agent trust. So, what makes Monte Carlo different is our belief that you cannot separate data observability from agent observability because the data feeding the agent matters as much as the agent itself. So, let's take, for example, this branch sales agent that we're looking at. So, this agent allows users to ask questions about sales for various branches around the United States. So if someone says, hey, what were the sales for Scranton last month? And the agent returns $200,000, but you know that number is double what that branch typically does since Michael Scott left. How do you know if the agent was hallucinating or if the underlying data was bad? I hope everybody caught that office joke in there. So with Monte Carlo, we map the agent to the tools that it calls all the way to the data feeding the agent, which is the agent context. To ensure that the agent context is healthy, reliable, and accurate, Monte Carlo applies monitors for freshness, volume, and schema to your critical tables. For freshness and volume, we use machine learning to learn the cadence and volume of every single table, and we alert on anomalies. We can easily override the machine learning simply by clicking this button, and we can do this for every monitor for every table. Additionally, we use agentic onboarding at Monte Carlo for your data domains. We use agents to deploy validation and metric monitors based on the data unique to each table. So gone are the days of manually building monitors by hand, which would take days, if not weeks, for teams to do. The Monte Carlo monitoring plan builds these intelligently in a matter of minutes. So we present the plan and you decide what gets enabled. Additionally, you can run the monitoring plan, deploy monitors, and even analyze root cause and remediate alerts, all from our Monte Carlo agent toolkit. Taking a quick peek here, I've just pulled up Claude, and you can see in Claude Code, I ran our monitoring advisor skill for my demo Audi agent. And it's providing recommendations across the four pillars for monitoring: performance, output, behavior, and context. Pretty cool. So let's hop back into the Monte Carlo UI. So when an alert fires on the context layer, Monte Carlo automatically runs a troubleshooting agent on high priority alerts, and it provides an impact analysis as well so that the teams assigned to the alert can remediate quickly. The troubleshooting agent works through hundreds of hypotheses against your data pipeline to determine root cause, provides steps to verify, and using our agent toolkit, you can even begin remediation steps. I can acknowledge the alert, mark it as an incident, and I can even link it to, let's say, Teams, ServiceNow, or Jira to create ticketing. So now that we have full observability on the context feeding our agents, let's take a peek now at how Monte Carlo helps us understand if the agent is actually running well. So we're going to look at performance. So performance for an agent, really, if you think about it, isn't the same problem as a service. So a service is one hop, right? I was a software engineer before in my previous life. You'd write something, it makes a request, it's usually one hop. But an agent is 10, 20, sometimes 100. So a tool call that's just 3 seconds slow isn't just 3 seconds of user pain. It's 3 seconds times however many times the agent loops. So we're seeing small regressions that get multiplied, which is why full trace visibility is imperative. You can easily monitor the performance of many of your agents in Monte Carlo with zero custom build. We surface trace latency, error rate, and token utilization for every agent you bring into Monte Carlo. We even surface information about tool calls, such as tool call volume, top tools used by the agent, and their respective latency and error rates. Additionally, you can apply monitors to any performance metric so that you're alerted if there are anomalies in aggregates of traces, or maybe if a single span breaches a performance metric that matters to you, like did any one span use more than 100,000 tokens? But here's where it gets really interesting. Let's say my overall P95 looks fine, but what happens if I break it down by model? Maybe I can all of a sudden see that my fallback model that I route to when my primary model is rate limited is 4 times slower. Or I can break it down by workflow or task just by selecting this dropdown. Having this ability to break down traces by model, workflow, or task allows me to see trends per segment that would be buried in my aggregate view. Let's move on to token utilization. So most people look at monitoring tokens as a cost line item. And yes, we all need to do that, even at Monte Carlo. But what we've learned at Monte Carlo is that a token spike is usually a bug. It may be a runaway loop. It might be the agent trying to connect over and over again. We see that a lot. Or context that just keeps growing because something hasn't gotten truncated. So when we see token spikes climbing while the output quality stays flat, that usually means that the agent is working harder for the same result. So performance tells us how fast your agent ran. Output, which we're going to look at in a minute, tells us whether the answer was right. Behavior is that kind of weird part in between, and it's really the hardest part to observe. So did the agent do the right things to get there? Did it pick the right tools? Did it take a sensible path? An agent can be super fast and still be flailing. So up to now, we've been looking at traces, which is really just a single run of the agent. But your users don't talk to your agent just once, right? They'll ask a question, they might not like the answer, they rephrase it, they try again. Every one of those is a separate trace. And if you're only looking at traces, you're seeing just one line out of the conversation and you're missing the rest. Monte Carlo stitches related traces together into what we call conversations. So you see the full thread. You get the conversation duration, total tokens for the conversation, and how many turns it took. And turn count is actually pretty interesting to look at and pay attention to. So, for example, this conversation that took 41 turns to answer something that probably should have taken just 2 or 3 turns is probably a failure, even though everything is reporting fine and I see my status is okay. We're looking at our actual production stack here in Monte Carlo, so you guys are getting a peek behind the scenes. So we actually use Monte Carlo against our own internal agentic workflows, right? So we have workflows that I talked about earlier in our context section called the troubleshooting agent and the triage agent. We also have an operations agent, which is a chat interface that lets users ask Monte Carlo any questions about the data and agents that Monte Carlo is observing. So here I'm on the conversations tab and I'm monitoring things like intent, right? So this is what users are actually asking of our agents. So we're monitoring all these conversations and we're ascertaining intent. So we can see that a lot of people are asking for help with monitor creation and setup. Others are asking about monitoring gaps and where Monte Carlo might recommend better coverage. So, conversations are also a way internally for our product team to understand if there are gaps between what we built and what people actually want. I can also filter to issues. So, this is where the agent might be struggling, like token heavy conversations, repeated tool calls, or conversations maybe where the user is frustrated. And frustration is really an interesting kind of metric to look at because performance based metrics are never going to surface frustration because the agent responds, nothing is erroring, latency is fine. Every single metric stays green, but the person had to ask 3 times. So earlier we talked about applying monitors to performance metrics, right? So like agent metrics. Behavior works the same way. Alongside metric monitors, you can set trajectory monitors. And these are going to allow us to ensure that our agent is calling tools in the right order. So if maybe I wrote a booking agent for booking hotel or flights, I want to be sure that the check seat availability is actually called before the book flight, right? So this is how we would do that with agent trajectory. But what about the times your agent fails in ways that you never thought to monitor? And that's where reinforcement loop comes in. So Monte Carlo is continuously analyzing your agent's behavior in production, and we're diagnosing what's going wrong with it. It rolls up by workflow. So before I dig into anything, I already know which workflow is the problem and how bad it is. Looking at reinforcement loop findings, it's going to show me a summary of every issue, and it even gives me recommended actions with fixes that have concrete steps. It's going to give me the traces that it's basing this on, so I can click into the actual failing conversations. From here, I can even open a ticket, or I can hand it over to Claude or Cursor and get a PR. It's pretty awesome. So that's the behavior side. So that's the agent or the path that the agent took to get where we are. But what's left is the part that our user actually sees. Was the answer any good? And this is the output. So we've looked at the 3 pillars so far. We've looked at context, performance, and behavior. The fourth pillar that we're going to look at is output. It's how do we know if our agent output is accurate and reliable? And this is a lot of times where teams get stuck. In fact, when I'm asking AI engineers how they're monitoring output today for quality or accuracy, some kind of just look down and say we're not. Others will say, hey, we just kind of are counting how many times we get thumbs up or thumbs down, and we're putting that in a database and we're counting that. But as you know from the volume of agents coming or from the traces that are coming from our agents, it's just impossible to manually comb through to decipher for accuracy, helpfulness, et cetera. So evaluation monitors are the solution. Essentially, we point an LLM at your agent's output and we have it score the thing that you care most about, right? On a schedule, the same way that you monitor for freshness on a table. So we can write evaluation monitors to check for things like, is this answer relevant to what was asked? Was it helpful? Did it stay inside the instructions that it was given? And we can even write custom evals. So let's take a peek at what this looks like in Monte Carlo. Adding an evaluation Monte Carlo is super easy. We even help by giving you pre-built templates for things like answer relevance, helpfulness, task completion, etc. And if you want to build a custom prompt, you simply just describe what you want to build and Monte Carlo will generate the custom prompt for you. So let's actually go take a peek at what this would look like for a fictitious Audi dealership, right? So as an Audi dealership, I'd probably want to check for things like that my chat agent is not referring people to competitors, right? I want to be sure my Audi chatbot is not telling people go check out BMW or Mercedes. And similarly, I probably want to check that the output isn't giving pricing answers that maybe are completely inaccurate. So, how we do this? Well, we define the evaluation criteria. For example, we can identify mentions of competitor vehicle brands. We want to give it definitions, right? So, what is a competitor? It's also great to provide some hard fail examples as well as allowed examples. And essentially, what the LLM is doing is it's giving a hard score to the agent output, and we're monitoring that score for anomalies or hard failures. So we've now seen how Monte Carlo provides complete agent observability against the four pillars of context, performance, behavior, and output. And Monte Carlo, as we mentioned, is really the only agent platform that is giving you this full visibility from all the way from the context to the agent, all the way to the performance of the agent. We're looking at freshness, accuracy, and reliability all the way up to the agent layer. So I hope what I showed today has started some wheels turning in your heads about where Monte Carlo can uniquely meet your agent trust needs. And I'm happy to open it up for any questions that might have come up during the demo.
This is awesome. Thank you so much, Jennifer. This was an amazing overview. So now that you've seen what your agent observability stack could look like and how comprehensive it could be, and I always like to say like the picture's worth 1,000 words. It's always great to see it in product. And before we head to the Q&A, just want to ask our audience, how would you rate the trustworthiness of your agents from 1 to 10, given what we've seen today? And while we are collecting responses, the responses for the first two questions were really impressive, actually. Most of our attendees already have agents in production and also consider bad data to be a major risk, which just says that we found a great audience today, which is a very good and resonating topic with you guys. All right, while your questions are coming in, I'm going to move us into the Q&A. And before we get any questions that come in live, and I see some questions coming in, but before we go to those, just wanted to ask Jennifer and Tanner if you wanted to share maybe what's your favorite agentic AI snafu over the past few weeks? We've seen a few in the news. I don't know if you have any of your favorites you want to share today.
Well, I can speak to an interesting finding. One of the most compelling parts of the demo that I thought Jennifer showed was the reinforcement loop piece. So just to be clear on what that is. So there's so many ways in which your agents can be untrustworthy, right? And yes, we have very robust alerts that you can set up on your agents from the context layer to the agent outputs. But the reinforcement loop is an autonomous engine that's constantly looking at the performance of your tool calls, the agent output. It's looking at cost analysis. So it's looking at so many different factors. We were running an agent internally, and we found that we had some compute on our Snowflake instance all of a sudden spike. And our reinforcement loop surfaced that a tool call was continuously making the same query unnecessarily. So there was no alert that we set up prior, but the reinforcement loop flagged this tool call being made down to our SQL warehouse and just passing the same query. I believe it was passing it more than 20 times in a row with the same result, adding unnecessary compute. And so it flagged that, and then we were able to remediate and even build in like a circuit breaker there so that it didn't pass the same query again and again if it returned a correct response. So the reinforcement loop, I believe, is going to be a really compelling and value add to our platform, and we're already seeing a lot of success with it amongst our customers. So that's just one call out that I wanted to have there. I also wanted to speak to just briefly. I run the field engineering team here at Monte Carlo, and I just want to speak to how we implement Monte Carlo on your behalf. So we are very hands-on. Speed is the name of the game here. So we try and aim for a 30-day onboarding in most cases where we can deploy broad scale monitoring to context and your agent layers. So our team is very hands-on and proactive in understanding use cases that tie back to the business and your stakeholders. So happy to take any questions as it relates to how we approach the onboarding and the implementation of the tool or the platform here at Monte Carlo as well. But Jennifer, thank you so much for that demo. I don't know if there's any use cases or customer success stories that you would want to highlight, Jennifer, in your experience lately, uh, or if there's any questions that I can take a look at as well.
Yeah, Ruslan, if there are no questions, I'm happy to jump in as well to talk about what I've found in the reinforcement loop as well with customers.
Perfect.
Yeah, please do.
Awesome. Yeah. So to Tanner's point, agents love to perform, right? So if they hit something like a not authorized, they will just keep going down the chain and try all these different tools. And I think that's where, most customers that I'm talking to, they're describing the reinforcement loop as the thing that's finding the unknown unknowns. And that's what Monte Carlo is all about. We were founded kind of in the data observability space. And instead of just all of these kind of manual monitors, we're applying things that will learn kind of the performance and cadence of your data. We're doing the same thing on the agentic side. So we really want to help find the unknown unknowns. There's just no way possible for anyone to know, like, where is my agent going to go wrong? And the reinforcement loop is really kind of the gate around that. So we're constantly, as Tanner said, analyzing, we're using AI to analyze the performance of your agent to recommend actions where the agent might be failing, either performance wise or frustration within the customer with agent output and things like that. And I've definitely been getting great feedback on the reinforcement loop, as well as the ability to tie all the way back down to the context layer, right? So as I mentioned earlier, in my fictitious The Office example, if Scranton sales are double, how do we know if that's because the agent is just making things up, or is it because maybe a job ran twice in my underlying invoices table, right? And it's duplicating the numbers. I wouldn't know that if I'm running two observability systems, one that's looking at my data and one that's looking at my AI. With Monte Carlo, we're able to give you observability into your entire data and AI pipeline.
No, that's great. And it seems like, especially considering the answers we got today for the first poll question, that seems like top of mind for a lot of those joining the call today. Something, Tanner, you mentioned about getting started in 30 days. I wanted to just ask realistically, what would it involve for a customer to get connected to our stack? What are some steps they need to consider?
Yeah, and I also want to, many of our customers too, like we work with customers across the agentic maturity curve, I'll say. So we have customers that are just barely experimenting with conversational agents, whether it be like Snowflake Cortex or Genie or Agent Bricks on Databricks. And then we have customers building completely custom agents, using specific frameworks. Monte Carlo supports the entire maturity curve there. So we just need to access that trace data, and we have ways in which we can help instrument and make that very seamless. So my advice is if you're sitting here going, oh, where could I start with Monte Carlo and helping bring trust to our agentic world at my company? Look, my guess is that all of you are experimenting with conversational analytics. Right. Everyone's wanting the idea of being able to instead of pass a query manually or build a report, they're asking a natural language search down to Cortex or any other warehouse. We play really well there, and we can immediately help get you integrated. We have native connections with Cortex. We have a very robust MCP server where your teams don't have to even log into Monte Carlo to do those checks. So, Ruslan, I would say allow us to get connected to your warehouse, monitor that context, but then also pick an agent or two. And back to Jennifer's demo, think through how the ways in which you would want to monitor. Is it the output? Is it the tool calls? Is it yeah? And what are those specific use cases? And Monte Carlo will help you do that. Um, I saw some questions come in here. Let's see here.
I'm happy to take the one from
Okay.
Rishab.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, so he's asking kind of how do we, if we have a conversation that takes an unexpected agent behavior within kind of an nth turn in a conversation, how can we tie that back? So one thing I didn't show in the demo was actually diving deep into a conversation thread. And the reason why I didn't do that, and I'm happy to share my screen for now, it was on our production environment and didn't want to share the actual information from production, but looking at my demo environment, one of the things we do within the conversations is allow you to actually look at each of those, right? So we can kind of even drill down to your question about like, what tools were being called and what were the conversations in those turns. So in my demo environment for like a travel assistant, I can see a user interacting and I can even look then down at that specific turn. I get a full kind of understanding of what happened, how are the tools called, in what order for that specific conversation. I can look at that at my trace span in a chart format as well. And this is really how we're kind of doing that within Monte Carlo. So again, with reinforcement loop, that's going to constantly be monitoring for things like frustration or tool calls, kind of being airing out or being done in the wrong order. This is how you would, from a specific conversation, dive into kind of the tool call order there. I hope that's helpful.
Thank you, Jennifer. I know we're nearing the time. There is one last question we're going to take. The question is, how are you rationalizing the log observability data across the various data sources and agentic orchestrators and for issue prediction, identification, and automated remediation? Wasn't sure who wants to take this. And then we can close it out.
I didn't quite hear the whole question there. Was that written in the chat? I wasn't quite sure.
Yes, this is the Q&A. How are you rationalizing the log/observability data across the various data sources and orchestrators?
Yeah, so our approach is to be very agnostic. So, I mean, we want to meet your observability needs where you are. And so we've architected Monte Carlo from day one to support any framework or data source. So, like Jennifer mentioned, we have over 50 connections. We have an open SDK that allows you to build custom integrations to Monte Carlo as well. So long term, we're going to keep this approach of being very agnostic and be able to tie that whole agentic system together from context to agent. And we're committed to building out further partnerships with our vendors as well. We're very closely aligned with Snowflake and Databricks. We were Data Governance Partners of the Year, or I should say Data and AI Governance Partners of the Year for Snowflake this past year and Databricks the year prior. But Ruslan, I'm happy to take a look at that question further and elaborate for that person that asked as well. I know we're coming up on time.
Sure, no, absolutely. And all the questions we didn't get to today, we'll definitely make sure to get back to you by email and reach back to you and get all your questions answered. So yeah, with that, I just want to thank everyone for spending the time with us. I want to thank Jennifer for the demo and Tanner for joining. Thank you both for taking the questions on. The recording and the resources are going to be on the way to our audience. Just check your inbox. We're going to land there soon. Just one last thing. I know we talked about the reinforcement loop. If you'd like to learn more about that, we're going to be talking about agents that improve other agents. That's going to be the subject of next week's session. Actually, exactly the same time, just exactly a week from today, Thursday 27th, 10 a.m. Pacific. We're going to have a fireside chat called Autonomous AI at Scale, where our Chief Data and AI Officer, Nick Atchison, will sit down with Intermezzo for Complexity, talk more about that. Today was about how you get trust into production, and then next week we're going to learn where this is all heading. The QR code's on the screen, so I want to thank everyone again for joining, and thanks for spending this time with us, and I hope you have a lovely rest of your day. Thank you.